and we've always loved Russian culture, but basically kind of F you, we're done with that. And Odessa has really become much more of a heartfelt Ukrainian city.
Hello and welcome to an uplifting podcast from two grumpy old men on Ukraine. My name is Michael Anderson. Uplifting, really, from Odessa, a city that is regularly bombed by Russia and has been so for 3 years. Yes, uplifting actually, because although the British journalist and author Julian Evans gave me a very realistic view from Odessa, a city he knows for more than 30 years, Evans' impressions and analysis leaves one with the defiance and resilience of the Ukrainians, and how Putin's relentless bombing of the city in fact only has made it more Ukrainian. Julian recently published a book called Undefeatable about Odessa and about Ukraine. You can find all the information about how to buy Julian's book, a really good read, on our Substack blog, where you can also find the interview we did with him a couple of months ago. I started by asking Julian why he was in Odessa this time.
Well, hi, Michael. The whole purpose of this trip really was to bring a four-wheel drive car, which I raised the money for, along with a lot of other generous people, and to drive it to Kharkiv full of tactical medical equipment and give it to a National Guard brigade and then send the medical equipment on to other units. So we brought 150 kilos of heat blankets, tourniquets, chest seals, burn packs, all those sorts of things. And then I've been making my way slowly back and inevitably coming to Odessa because A, it's a very good way out, and B, well, I don't think the rest of Ukraine would mind me saying it's my favorite Ukrainian city. So, and obviously the subject of my recent book.
Tell me about a little bit about your very long personal story and connection with Odessa.
Well, yeah, it started 30 years ago, and I kind of discovered the place a bit by accident. I was on a riverboat trip just doing a piece of, I suppose, experimental journalism in Eastern Europe, finding out what was happening after the fall of the Berlin Wall. And so I went down from Kiev to Yalta, down the Dnipro River, and suddenly, out of nowhere, the last stop, I don't think it was even on the schedule, but it was just the place we left the cruise to go home from. I landed in Odessa and I just felt completely in love with it. I came back a few years, spent time here and fell in love with a woman from the city. We got married in a monastery opposite the railway station, and that's how it started. You know, I suppose a kind of involvement with the Odesan life and involvement with the family and the city, which, you know, I continue to not be able to keep away from.
Tell me, and I know this is this is pretty much an impossible question, but anyway, tell me, what is it that makes Odessa so special / weird? Because I think any foreigner who comes to Odessa basically immediately falls in love with it, but it's very difficult to explain why.
Yeah, I think in my book I've got an 85-line paragraph describing the city was founded at the end of the 18th century and boomed because of the worldwide demand for wheat that was happening. It had a French governor. It was master planned as a city from the very beginnings of absolute, really terra incognita. There'd only really been trading settlements there before. Italian masons built it. It's a stunningly beautiful city. And along with that kind of those boom years came a huge immigrant population from all over the place, from France, Germany, Italy, through to Turkey and Armenia, and very big Jewish population. So that produced a sort of culture, a really, really fertile and invigorating, exhilarating cultural mix. A lot of music, a lot of theatre, a lot of opera, and a lot of humour, because there was a lot of surviving that needed to happen while people were making their fortunes, and with all these different people flooding into the city, there was just a very big kind of make do and survive mentality. And I think that kind of carries on till today. Sense of getting through. Odessa has been through a great deal. It took 340,000 troops to occupy it in the Second World War. They did eventually, the Nazis, with the Romanians' help. Today, Odessans know that they can go home and there could be a drone attack, there could be a ballistic missile, but they carry on. I would say the national mood is this mixture of depressed and defiant. Depressed mainly because they're tired. We haven't really helped them in nearly enough to defeat Putin, and they are tired of doing it on their own. But the defiance in Odessa, especially, I find rather moving. It's a working city. The port's working, the shops are working. There's 1 million people here. And Odessans get up every morning and make a life each day. It might be a bit more existential than your life or mine, and it's certainly very stressful. But I went for a walk yesterday, and I walked right through the center of the city, what's called the historic center, the 19th century part. And right from one end of Pushkinska Street to the other, and then on to Primorsky Boulevard, which leads down to the Potemkin Stairs, the famous Potemkin Stairs. And I saw people walking, shopping, young people doing rehearsals for street dance performances, people getting married. There was a very fussy and very capable bride organizing her husband into the right open outdoor wedding photographs. So there are these two sides to it. I mean, people are undoubtedly very stressed, but at the same time, there's this kind of spirit of carrying on, and spring is here. To a large extent, Odessa looks as if normal life is continuing, but there's no doubt that underneath, the people are feeling probably a bit more depressed than usual, certainly very defiant. They're very, very annoyed with Trump. They feel betrayed by the US. I've talked to several ordinary Odessans, and they just cannot understand why he's giving so much to Russia, and failing to take account of Russia's aggression, and that Ukraine is utterly the innocent victim in the conflict. So there are these mixed attitudes, but life goes on, and they tend to take things pretty lightly. Tragedy is obviously tragedy, but there was, of course, Mikhail Zhvanetsky, the famous Odessa comedian, who said, "Look, if you're going to die, you might as well die laughing." And that's very black humor, but to some extent, it kind of puts a spotlight on Odessa people's attitudes.
I mean, it's very interesting, your impressions here, because I mean, what we could read in Western media was all the rumors coming out of the White House was that at some point people were fearing that Trump would accept Putin's claim that Odessa should be part of that band that would go from the Donbass and all the way over to Moldova. And if I were reading that and I was sitting in Odessa, I would probably find it quite difficult to smile, even with the Odessan type of humor, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I mean, I think they have quite a lot of faith in President Zelensky's ability to hold a line and to say, no, this is not going to happen this way. Whatever your briefings, whatever your spin in the White House, this is definitely not going to happen. We will not sign up to anything which is absolutely flagrantly unjust. I can't really say the rudest things that Odessans have been saying to me about Trump, but basically, it's if that's your attitude, get lost. We'll do it on our own.
So there's quite a lot of support for the EU at the moment. They've recognised that having been doing not very much the right thing for a long time, the EU is now beginning to do the right thing. The EU and Britain.
How about the other side? I mean, one thing we also have heard out of the Trump administration, Witkopf and people like that saying, Ukraine is sort of like half and half. There are the Ukrainian speaking who wants to go to Europe, and then there are the Russian speaking who really are Russians and really want to belong to Russia. You and me and hopefully pretty much anybody else knows that this is all tosh and nonsense. But I want to ask you, what do the Odesans feel about relationship with Russia and with Russians? Because for people who may not know Odessa, this was, whatever people are saying now, this used to be very much a sort of, yes, Odesan city, but also if we talk about language, it was a Russian speaking city. What kind of relationships do the people in Odessa now have with Russia and with the language and with Russian culture?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, thankfully, a lot can change in 3 years. And when I came and spent a month here in November 2022, there was still a good deal of difficulty in talking about the situation because, as you say, Odessa's traditionally been not just a Russian-speaking, but a Russian-leaning city culturally. And I think even possibly a sense among some Odessans, I've no idea how many, but certainly I've come across it, that Russian culture is somehow, or was somehow superior to Ukrainian culture, that Ukrainian culture somehow didn't quite match up to Russia's greatness. All of that sort of talk. In the 2.5 years since I was here for that month, I've been back several times. I've been back, I think, at least half a dozen times, and I have seen things change. Conversations that used to take place in Russian now take place in Ukrainian, or at least they start and finish in Ukrainian. The street and the shops, people speak Ukrainian. I mean, Russia's obviously done itself no favors for probably 3 or 4 generations with what it's been doing in the last 3 years. But here, Russia's been doing no favors since its regular bombing of the city, and they just say, okay, we tried to be on your side. We tried to understand that there was a Russian grievance and the Russian speakers you felt belong to you. And we've always loved Russian culture, but basically kind of F you, we're done with that. And Odessa has really become much more of a heartfelt Ukrainian city. And I think actually Ukraine has sort of become more attached to Odessa, which has always been a little bit of a city within a state. I mean, Russia can go whistle in terms of Odessan loyalty now. I think you'd find probably 90% of people would say no. This is Ukraine. It's Ukraine. It's going to stay Ukraine.